Hey guys and gals, what's up? It's me, Larry the Batman fan. I'm back with another video. So I guess due to popular demand, Super Nintendo Top 15 was pretty popular, and I think the Top 15 for the PlayStation 3 was pretty popular as well. So I'm going to go ahead and actually do one for the Sega Genesis here. And then later down the road, I'm going to do one for the Nintendo Wii and one for the Nintendo GameCube. And maybe I'll do one for the original Xbox and the PS2. So without further ado, oh yeah, I also wanted to say this before we get started. The reason why these are top 15s and not top 5s or top 10s is simply because I just feel like top 5 is not enough to warrant buying a system or playing a bunch of games for the system. And 10 games, 10 games is good for a top 10, but the problem is that I still feel like I'm leaving some games out that I think are essential or worth playing. So that's why these are top 15s, if you guys are wondering. I know Anthony Chobot Does Pop Culture was probably wondering why. And there may be a few other people, like the Real G Money Hairston or something, that is wondering why they're not top 10s. So that's the reason why I do top 15s. And sometimes it's a list that I feel is my personal opinion, but it's not just mine, it's also others that would agree with what I'm saying too. So without further ado, let's go ahead and I'll share with you guys my top 15. So without a doubt, at the top of the list is Sonic the Hedgehog 3. That's number 1. And then I put Sonic the Hedgehog 2 at number 2. And then the original Sonic the Hedgehog, although some people call it Sonic the Hedgehog 1, at number 3. They're all great games for Sega Genesis. They're excellent. They had 6 or 7 games on the Sega Genesis total. They also had Sonic Spinball, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, Wacky Worlds featuring Sonic. That was a Sonic game. And there was also Sonic 3D Blast and Sonic and Knuckles. But I'm just putting the first 3 up here. The third game being in first place, the second game being in second place, and the third game, or the first game rather, being in third place. They are all really great games for the Sega Genesis. They are great platformers. It was like the first time you saw a blue hedgehog that could run really fast, collect rings, stomp on people's heads, bad guys' heads, and then fight Dr. Robotnik at the end of like every 2 or 3 stages. All in all, they're all great games, and they definitely need to be on the list for the greatest Sega Genesis games ever made. Now, moving on from that, I also do have cartridge forms of some of these games, so I'm going to show you the games while I talk about them. So number 4, I don't have it on cart. I do, but I have it in the 6-pack cart. I don't have the separate cart for it because it's too expensive. I do have that game also on the Sega Genesis collection for PS3 and PS4. So technically I have that way, even though that's kind of cheating. But the actual Sega Genesis cart I do not own. And this game is none other than Golden Axe 2. Now the first Golden Axe game was also great, and the third Golden Axe game apparently was never released outside Japan, which was a bad move because the Golden Axe games were great on the Sega Genesis. We did later on get the third game on the PS3 game. I don't think they put it on the PS4 game, which is stupid. And they didn't put Sonic the Hedgehog 3 on there, which is also stupid, because those are essentials. But Golden Axe 2 is a great game. You beat the crap out of these little squirrels and you take the little gems and potions. At certain parts of the game, you get to ride on these animals and use the animals as weapons to like beat and defeat the enemies on the screen. Basically what it is, it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up game, and it's just really good. You got the guy with the axe, you got the sexy hot girl in the red bikini, it's like a princess or something, and then you got the other guy who's got like the sword. It kind of reminds me of Conan the Barbarian, and you could use that to, whack the enemies with the sword. Oh no, Golden Axe is a great game. Golden Axe 2, that is. They're all really good. Golden Axe 1, 2, and 3, but I'm just putting the second game on here. Number 5 is Streets of Rage 2, which again, I don't have the actual cart. I do technically on the 6-pack cart, but not by itself. And that's a great beat 'em up game. Definitely a good side-scrolling beat 'em up game also on the Sega Genesis. Axel, I believe, is one of the names of the characters. There's a few other characters in the game that you could play as. You could play as a girl and some other dude with a rocket launcher, I believe. That game had that in the game where if you're doing so well, you could have somebody fire off rocket launchers to kill the enemies that you were fighting. They didn't do that in the third game. Excuse me. They didn't do that in the third game. They kind of eliminated that, which was a dumb move. But it was a great game, and I highly recommend it. Okay, now I got some cartridges I can show. At number 6, we have this, Aladdin. Basically, you take a licensed game on from the movie, and then you turn it into a game. That's usually a recipe for disaster, because 90% of these licensed games are shit. They suck. They're utter crap. They're not good. But Aladdin and the Lion King for the Sega Genesis were actually really good, and they were done very well. Made by Virgin Games. I know we all want to make some jokes. Virgin! They actually said that in one of those McDonald's games on Sega Genesis. They actually said that. But all joking aside, it's made by Virgin Games. They did a really good job on this game. This version is better than the Super Nintendo version. In fact, the Super Nintendo version really isn't that great, because all you have is apples for throwing at your enemies. And honestly, how the hell is an apple going to hurt somebody? Like, even if you throw it at someone, they're just going to say, ouch. Whereas a sword, you can actually kill somebody with a sword. So I like this version better because they had the sword. Because at the time, Nintendo wouldn't allow that in the game because they considered it too violent, which was stupid because it's a Disney game. It's not Mortal Kombat, it's not Doom, and it's not, Street Fighter or Zero Tolerance. That's another, or Lethal Enforcer. That was another game that had controversy behind it. Like, shooting games and fighting games had controversy. Anyways, it's a good platformer game. It's hard as hell, but it's definitely rewarding if you beat it. And there is a cheat code in this game that a lot of people don't know about, that I know about. It's start, you press the start button, and then you press ABBA twice. You can go to any level you want in this game. I don't know if you could do that in the Super Nintendo version. It might have been a different cheat code, but you can do that in the Sega Genesis version, which was a nice touch. So I've seen the entire game, especially when you get to that lava level. I could never beat that part. I always had to just cheat and skip past that level because it was like, this is too damn hard for me. But yeah, Aladdin's a great game. I recommend it. Alright, number 7 we have Robocop versus the Terminator. You see that price tag? It says $40 on it. I didn't pay that. I paid like 20. That's because past Sim Legends, where I was, where I live, that was like probably 20 minutes away. They shut it down, so they have the Troy location up, but they don't have their new Lark Street location. So I got this there half price because they were going to shut that place down. And it's a really great game. It's a good side-scrolling shooting game where you can play as Robocop. I think you can play as the Terminator later on in this game. I forgot. Might be in the Super Nintendo version that you can do that. I'm not sure. But anyways, it's a good game. Definitely bloody and violent. I think they censored the Super Nintendo version. There wasn't any like guts or anything showing like there was in this version. But it's really awesome. Just basically side scroll. You shoot bad guys with like a machine gun or a bazooka or whatever the hell he uses, and it's really fun. And there's also some climbing elements where you're climbing up a ladder and you're going across. I will say that the controls do seem a little bit slippery. They're not perfect, but overall, still, it's a great game and definitely makes my top 15 at number 7, I believe. Now, at number 8, this game is surprisingly one of the best RPGs on the system. There's also Phantasy Star 2 and Phantasy Star 4. I don't own those physically on cart. I have it on the PS4 game and the PS3 game, but I don't own them physically. But I do have Phantasy Star 3 here for Sega Genesis. And it's a really good game. I do like it. The only thing is that you definitely gotta know where you're going. You know what I mean? Like, it took me a while to figure this shit out, of where I'm going. How do I get to this spot? Go into a store and like no money. So you had to like do some stuff to get money to progress in the game. So it's definitely got a lot of progression. This is definitely a game that you want to play if you have the day off from work. But if you don't have the day off from work, don't even bother, because it takes a lot of grinding to get to where you need to be. But overall, I still like this game. I think it's a good game. I'm sure a lot of collectors out there would agree that Phantasy Star was one of the best games, RPG-wise, on the Sega Genesis. It's a really good game. You're not alone in this game either. You do have help from one other person in the game. I think later on you get a third person that joins your team and you roam around together as one. Just had to say that part. And there is a good level up system in the game too. Overall, it's a great RPG and I highly recommend it. Number 9, bitches. Mortal Kombat 2. I could also put Mortal Kombat 1, Mortal Kombat 3, and Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 on here. But I chose Mortal Kombat 2 here, since I believe it's the only one I have on Sega Genesis. I have the first game on Super Nintendo though, even though that version they censored. But yeah, this game you can also get on the Midway Arcade Treasures 2 game for PS2, Xbox, and GameCube as well. Just had to throw that out there. I like playing as Raiden. I'm a badass with Raiden. Sub-Zero is also pretty cool too. But there's a bunch of different characters. They're fighting for the title in Mortal Kombat. And they're going against the evil Shao Kahn at the end of the game. That's basically what it's about. I saw the movie. The movie from '95 was really good. But yeah, they're fighting in a tournament basically to defeat their opponents and then go against Shao Kahn. Had this mythology thing going on with the worlds porting through one portal to another or something. That too. That's just a little history on Mortal Kombat. But as far as the games go, they're fighting games, and they really put fighting games on the map. I mean, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter were some of the only fighting games from back in the day that really did well. I know there's a few other good ones, like, Fatal Fury 1 and 2. Clay Fighter was a decent game, Clay Fighter 2. And also Samurai Showdown and Eternal Champions was okay. But, they never really were able to make it out of the mosh pit like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter did, because they're still around to this very day. So that's a testament of how great this fighting series is, that it can stay around that long. Nowadays we have Soul Calibur that stepped in, and they're still going strong with that series. Tekken's still going strong, and the Injustice series, I think, is going pretty strong. I hope they make an Injustice 3. That would be pretty cool if they did. But Clay Fighter died off, and I haven't seen a Samurai Showdown game since the Xbox 360, which is like over 12, 13 years ago. And there is no mention of Clay Fighter coming back either. Number 10, we have Kid Chameleons. It's a good game. Plays a dude who's basically a cool kid who's got like this little metal rod or something that you use to whack enemies with. Eventually your power up is it becomes like a badass chameleon who can like kick butt, and it's done in like a platformer way. The only thing that sucks is the jumping mechanics. They suck. The jumping mechanics could be a little bit better in the game, especially at how slippery the controls can be. But besides that, the game's really fun. It's really good. The power-up system really makes you even more powerful, even more strong. And overall, it's just a really great game. Alright, now number 11. A couple of these games, you may be surprised by me putting them on here. Remember, this is a top 15, and top 10, that does please most of the people because I'm mentioning games here that I feel are necessary, or games that people really like. But the last 5 are chosen at random and are ones that I think are noteworthy. So we have XMen II for number 11. This is one of the best superhero games that you could get on your Sega Genesis. The first X-Men game on Sega Genesis is good too, but it isn't as good as the second one. The second one's much better. Really, everything that there was to complain about in the first game, having to reset your Genesis and some of the platforming being kind of, mediocre, cannot be said in this game because everything is spot on about this game. Everything. The level design, the graphics are decent for its time. I know they don't hold up now because this game came out over 25 years ago. But overall, it's just a really great game. Really, the only stupid thing about this game is when it boots up, it just starts. The game just starts. There's no menu screen. It doesn't pop up on screen, nothing. It just turns on. Enterprises of Sega Genesis Incorporated, INC for short. And then next thing you know, you're just playing the game. You're like, what? Like, what kind of game does that? Doesn't make any sense. Other than that, great game. Okay, now number 12 is Tin Head. A lot of people don't put this on their list. I put it on my list. I like Tin Head. One of the first Sega Genesis games I played when I was younger. I was like 13 or 14 years old. Tin Head's fun. You play as this dude who's basically trying to save his girlfriend from this evil guy who kidnapped her. I forget his name. And so it's a platform game where you play as Tin Head. His weapon is he throws bombs out of his head. You can throw it up, down, or you can sort of make it skip like that. Like it's in the middle and it skips. to hit its enemies. Now, I will say the enemies in the game are pretty stupid, like a strawberry ice cream cone and these jumping little, I don't know, kangaroos or some shit. I don't know what the hell you call them. But other than that, I mean, it's a decent game. It's not bad for a platform game. I recommend Tinhead if you guys like platformer games. And the music in that game is sticking in my head right now. So, I mean, that's a sign that, I mean, this game really is a great game. I mean, when the music sticks in your head and it's just that memorable. Dun 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 dun. That's the music. Look it up if you guys don't believe me. But yeah, it's a great game. Good platformer game. Moving on. Alright, now number 13. I'm tying in two games because they're both in the same franchise. I know there's a third game. There's also Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Or Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, whatever. I don't know if that's on Sega Genesis. It might have been exclusive to Super Nintendo. But I could be wrong. I don't have that one in here though. But I do have Super Street Fighter 2. Or Street Fighter 2 Championship Edition. And I do have Super Street Fighter 2 right here. Both great fighting games that put the fighting genre on the map and are definitely worth playing. Ryu is a badass in that game. And I like playing as Dulcian because he can throw his hands real fast. And of course, you can't go wrong with Vega with those claws. And Gully, that sergeant looking dude. Excuse me, who's in the war, but in the game it's a fighting game. And then at number 14, because I like Monopoly, this game's up here. It's a really fun game. I've had a blast playing this game ever since I was young. I thought it was a very fun Sega Genesis game. They did release this also on Super Nintendo, and there was a cheat that you could do in Super Nintendo where you could set your money up to like $5,000 and then give the computer that you're going against only $1 and yeah, see how long the computer lasts. You could not do that in the Genesis version, so that was a plus for the Super Nintendo version. I think the graphics were slightly better on Super Nintendo over this version, but overall this is still a great game. A lot of fun going around the board, trying to build up, houses and hotels to make your opponent suffer. If the opponent lands on that spot, has to pay for the houses and all that. Like $400 or $500 for landing on one of the properties. It's a really good game, a lot of fun. How could you not put this on the list? It's a blast. And then the last game I have for the list at number 15 is Lethal Enforcers. It's a really good shooting game. Definitely a controversial one because back in like 93 they were talking about games being too violent, and this Night Trap, Street Fighter 2, and Mortal Kombat were brought up because they were really violent. This game I heard you could play with a blue light gun. I don't have that, so I just use a controller. But from what I played of this game, it is fun. It's a good shooting game. You play as a cop, and you're killing bad guys and saving innocent civilians in the game. So, I recommend it. Honorable mention games for the Sega Genesis is Phantasy Star 2, Phantasy Star 4, Smash TV, which I have right here, Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, Urban Strike, Sonic Spinball, Sonic 3 Blast, which wasn't the most amazing Sonic game, but it wasn't a bad game either. Sonic and Knuckles, Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, the original Mortal Kombat, the other Street Fighter game that I mentioned, WWF Royal Rumble, WWF WrestleMania, WWF Raw, and WWF the arcade game. And then also the original Streets of Rage and the third Streets of Rage game. Dynamite Headdy, Beyond Oasis, Eternal Champions, Star Control, Buck Rogers, Blades of Vengeance, and Fatal Labyrinth, Poltergeist, The Haunting starring Poltergeist rather, and of course the Road Rash series. And those are my honorable mentions for the Sega Genesis. Also, NBA Jam is also on the list too for an honorable mention, both of them. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed my top 15 Sega Genesis games plus honorable mentions. I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment, like, subscribe. Larry the Batman fan signing off. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.